Hello again, this is Elle, your friendly social work librarian. In the last video, we talked about, thinking through building out a search strategy and what do we do when we sort of like run out of terms that we think that the literature might use. We are not expected to be complete experts immediately. That's what we need to do some of this research for. And so before I really do a lot of those searches in the databases, I like to check out background information to see what are the terms that are going to be used within the academic literature. So I'm going to go into the Encyclopedia of Social Work here. So within the Encyclopedia of Social Work, it says it's an encyclopedia, right? So rather than this being journal articles, this is not going to be peer reviewed. This is just going to be contextual information so that we can, you know, come up with a better idea. Is our topic too broad? Do we need to narrow it down? And what are the terms that we might want to use in our search? So with the search in the databases, we were playing with our queer teen homeless situation. And so we thought, maybe there might be other words for homelessness that we couldn't come up with off the top of our head. So I'm just going to type in homelessness, and you can see that there are a number of articles in the Encyclopedia of Social Work that I might want to take a look at. And this one actually looks really good for it. It even includes our population that we're looking at here. So here we've got some key terms. And so runaway is one that I maybe hadn't thought of before. And so let's go ahead and do runaway. And I'm also going to do that as 2 words. And actually, because that might be runaways plural, I'm going to add that asterisk again. All right. So here we've got some more information. I love a definition. I recommend that when you're writing your own papers, you do include definitions of what you're talking about. It just helps sort of like focus your paper a little bit more. And it also helps you when you're searching for, your sources. Are they defining things the same way that you are, or are they defining them a little bit differently? And then that can help you sort of decide which sources might be better for you to use than others. So, and here we go, runaway youth. We've got a definition right here. And then, so if you are going to use this definition, I would recommend not citing the Encyclopedia of Social Work because you see they're actually getting that definition from someone else. So I can actually go and I can find that article and then go take a look, see if you can find that article, and then actually if you're going to use their definition, cite that article. And that's sort of true anytime you're citing anything. If you're trying to cite something who's citing somebody else, go to that original instead of citing the citation. So that's, a couple of tips there. Reasons for running away. Again, thinking through how you might want to narrow down your topic if you've got something that's just a little too broad to handle for a paper. Some of these things can give you ideas about ways like maybe you want to focus on educational policies and how that impacts for your queer population, that might not be what you want to sort of focus on. You might want to focus on some other things like why they're running away or why they're homeless. But at any rate, this can give you sort of some ideas on that. A lot of times you'll find some good demographic and statistical information on these things. So if you're trying to talk about prevalence, this can be a great way to find some of those sources. Again, go to the original sources rather than citing the Encyclopedia of Social Work. So yeah, lots of really good information on this page. This is a long one. You can see there's also the table of contents over here if you wanted to just go in and look a little bit at specific areas. One of the things I really like about the Encyclopedia of Social Work, and this doesn't appear in every single article within the Encyclopedia of Social Work, but a lot of them do have this implications for social workers, which can be really interesting and really helpful when you're thinking through how to apply this to your social work context, and even, again, sort of narrowing down how you want to focus in your paper. And then, of course, as I mentioned, they're citing their sources here. And so a lot of these um, will be peer reviewed, not all of them. But this is another great way to find some peer reviewed articles without even like going into the databases and searching. So, Journal of Traumatic Stress, that's another peer reviewed journal. So, lots of good information that you can find within the Encyclopedia of Social Work. Um, One thing that I will say, since we're sort of looking at our queer population, the Encyclopedia of Social Work doesn't have a lot of great information for that particular community. And so in that case, I would actually go to maybe one of these other encyclopedias. Let me go ahead and go to Oxford Reference. Let's just type in queer youth and see what comes up. All right, and then I'm going to come over here and we can social welfare and social services. So we can limit it by this subject area. So there we go. So we've got some family services, LGBTQ youth, um, transgender people, lesbians. So you can find, these articles on the specific communities within that LGBTQIA plus umbrella. And then you can just go in and start sort of grabbing some of those terms. And even, if you want to like go in. And so queer population is also an interesting one because like not only are there a number of different terms, but as I mentioned, that's a big umbrella, right? And so a lot of times it's including both sexual and gender minorities. And so for some of your topics, you might actually want to say, okay, rather than having the full LGBTQIA umbrella, maybe I'm just looking at, gender minorities. So transgender, non-binary, those kinds of things. Or maybe the gender minority aspect is not as important to what you're looking at, and you want to take a look at sexual minorities specifically, right? So gay, bisexual, lesbian, those kinds of terms, and maybe not include some of the transgender terms. And then others like this homelessness one, I would say probably it's probably best to take a look at the full umbrella. So it just sort of depends on what you're finding and what's most interesting to you, But even within these, we can sort of see some terms that we might want to think about including. So that is sort of that background information, a couple of places to look to find it, and then that can sort of help you as you're building this out. So as we know, we saw some of these other terms. And then, as I mentioned, with the asterisks, you can use asterisks for the LGBTQIA plus community because, as you've seen, like it's used with, you know, sometimes there's just the LGBT acronym, sometimes there's the LGBTQ, sometimes it goes out a little further. So if I just do this LGB asterisk, that'll pull all of those up as well. So then let's compare. This was what we had was just like the single terms. If we run this search, yeah, we've got a whole lot more. So that's a great way of using background information to help you build out a search strategy that is really going to be much more effective in the databases. And then, of course, while I'm in here, I can go and I can limit it to peer review if I only want to look at peer review. And I can also limit it to, you know, the last few years, whatever my date range is that I want to be looking within. And so that's narrowing it back down. So that is sort of using background information to help you build out a search strategy. In the next video, we'll talk a little bit more about finding terms through the databases themselves.